Welcome to our story. The central disruptor. Basically, we are talking about the NauNau. And the NauNau is a tribe that's all over Rilao. They're on all the different districts. And they just look like any other tribe. I mean, they may have their little different appearances, but they just perfectly blend in. Now, the thing with the NauNau that you have to really understand is that they only live in the now. And actually, Aborigines have this thing where they don't consider the past or the future different from the here and now. It's all part of the here and now, almost like this frozen time-space continuum that Einstein is talking about. And so these NauNau work in the society. This is the first part. Now, in the society, work is gamified, and especially the work that we're looking at is in the industry.
15 minutes left.
So what you need to know, this is in 2045, and we're living in a culture that is high-tech, and we have augmented reality on everything. We've got gamification taken to the extreme everywhere. So this gamified workforce that is now appearing is interesting, and the Mau Mau, among other people, go to these clubhouses, as we call them, where they do this gamified work. And this gamified work is basically based on these very fantasy-like worlds with birds flying around, and by touching birds and following birds around, they actually do the work that they're actually not aware of. But it's a gamified way. They collect points, they play around with birds, but in fact they're solving puzzles, and these puzzles are solved in each district and are then cross-checked with each other so that there cannot be any mistakes made. So they're doing pretty dull work, almost like CAPTCHA codes are actually a way to translate some non-digital documents these days. Then there's IDON, and IDON, she is a world builder, and her job is to create these gamified worlds so that these co-workers will be very happy. These workers will be very happy to work in it, and they call them the bird workers because the most popular, actually, virtual reality gamified work layer is one where blue birds are everywhere, and by gesturing and following these birds, you're actually doing your work. IDON takes her job very seriously, and she considers it a high form of art. She can do her work everywhere, actually. She has this very, because she's more upper class, she has all this implanted biotech that enables her to work everywhere. She can work in the park, and the way she puts things out on the canvas into the game is actually looking a lot like she's doing a Tai Chi dance to the outside world. So you see this person doing a sort of Tai Chi movements in the park. It's actually her designing these worlds. Now, what happens is the drama, the disruption is where in Skyring, where she works, she went to work one day and some error occurred which switched off this layer, this gamified layer that had been going on perfectly well for 3 years. And what happened is that especially the NauNau, as opposed to other people, started going downhill really fast mentally and physically, and started dying off. What they concluded finally, what we see in the newspaper as well, is that these NauNau are so in the here and now that once these sort of almost this addiction to these sensory input from the augmented reality worlds was gone, they were stuck with a reality, a harsh normal reality in Rilao of rock and sea and nothing going on. And they sort of died off. And it's actually known from the Aborigines that once they were put in prisons, they would just die in that prison because they did not have the concept of the future and the past, so therefore no hope, nothing to look back to. They just died because they thought the world would be like this forever. And the same happened with the NauNau. So they were unable to cope with a non-gamified world anymore. So they died. And IDON, our protagonist, was so overwhelmed by this, was so devastated by this, that she decided to do something about it. Since the government said, oh, we fixed the bug and this will never happen again, she was like, no, I don't think I even want this to happen anymore. And she was then looking for ways to get these people out of this system. But the problem is, though, that the shock would be so big for them between this beautifully poetical, gamified world and the harsh reality where nothing goes on, that she decided to start adding layers to slowly and gradually bring them to the reality level where actually they could just be themselves in reality and add meaning to their own lives. Because now everything seems meaningless with these birds, and although very rich in meaning, as in you know, the game, not adding any meaning to their life in a more autonomous way. And so she started designing these levels, and sometimes found out that the steps were too big, and they would sort of immediately start drift off and doing worse and worse, and you know, with the danger of dying off. So she was constantly tweaking these layers, and in the end is now in the middle of designing these layers, getting these people out of them. But this also, of course, triggers a much bigger existential question. Why are we here? If all this gamified stuff is gone, who am I? What am I doing here? As somebody once said, I mean, reality is broken. If it's no longer a game, then reality is really a really bad game with really bad mechanics, and you don't want to live in that anymore. And then what? So all these questions get triggered, and that's what we find really interesting.